Hi, welcome to the Sticky Thoughts podcast. Here we talk about thoughts that stuck to us. We get curious, we get honest, and we try not to spiral, but no promises. So, we are your hosts. This is Smriti Kamath.
And I am Kajal Singh. On this podcast, we are showing up not as psychologists, but people who are also psychologists. Want to talk about how very recently we had all the news of a possible war that could happen. A lot of people lost their lives, and the impact of it is still around. We can't really consider things have gone back to normal. But I think despite all of this, most of us have been able to continue with our daily lives to a great extent, I would at least say. It's sometimes it strikes me how we're able to separate the two. The continuous non-stop news coming in about things going bad or very intense on the borders, and while we're also able to, go on with our lives. It makes me wonder how we manage to hold that distance. And not just in this case, but also in similar incidences that we hear from, global unrest. So this phenomena is called compartmentalization. So when you compartmentalize, you actually divide your thoughts and emotions and experiences into different mental compartments. Like you organize your thoughts and feelings so as to try and manage them more efficiently. It helps you concentrate on one aspect of your life for the time being. You can't be doing all the things together, and we come across such information almost all the time. And maybe I look at my phone while I'm at work and I hear a news that could have possibly disturbed me, but right now I don't have the time, maybe, or the bandwidth to look at it or feel it or process it. So I just shut my phone down and go back to work. I think this can be called like a mental drawer that we all use.
This can be really helpful, like you said, but at the same time, it can also be misused. Like, for example, you said, you looked at the thing, you shut your phone, and you went back to whatever the thing was, and then it would really depend if how we are using this capacity of ours to compartmentalize. It's helpful in the sense key, for example, you are living with somebody, you have a roommate, and you fought with them in the morning, and it was kind of an intense fight. So you compartmentalize that to go to work so that you are still able to focus. But then it really matters if you're coming back and really addressing it, or if you have kind of permanently put it in a drawer and sealed it away forever, that would be misusing because of a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So, what compartmentalization is kind of a mild form of dissociation, which is not always conscious, and it's majorly a defense mechanism. The goal is to temporarily put things away so that we are not overwhelmed by these emotions. And maybe if we're in a point that we can't really process these things or feel these things, we can put it away at a later point to feel these emotions later. And it's not exactly about ignoring your problems, even though it might seem like that, but it's not about ignoring it. Again, like I said, it's a temporary, so we organize it and then we get back to that drawer. A healthy example of what I just mentioned would also be ki you fought with your roommate, you had to leave because you had to get to work. You worked and you compartmentalize that, so you are focusing on your work. But then when you go back home that day, you bring it up at a time that is suitable for you and your roommate. Ki, okay, that had happened in the morning. So where are we on that? So this would help you set aside the burden of dealing with heavy emotions in that point when you are encountering them so that you are not constantly emotionally stimulated and kind of so that it does not exhaust you.
You can't all the time be available for all the emotional attention your body or mind or situation asks you of. So all of us have different parts of our lives. We have a personal life, we have a social life, we have a professional life. If we are planning to cater or be present for all of them, I think we will have to continuously prioritize our attention. Which part of our life needs attention right now? So while we are prioritizing one thing, we are compartmentalizing another thing. It helps us, reduce or manage stress. If I do not compartmentalize a fight that I might have had with my roommate. Like you said, at work, I would not be able to focus at work. I would not be able to be productive or perform at work, which is also an important part of my life. So I could use compartmentalization here and maybe try not to think about that for the time that I am at office. To a great extent, all of us do it. It is useful, I think, to do it. It helps with the work life balance, or I don't want to say work life balance, all of it's life balance, your personal life, your social life, your professional life. And it allows you maybe sometimes, take a moment before you respond to a certain situation. How I said, if your fight needs attention, if it needs attention and if you can give it the attention at the moment, then great. But if you can't, and if you also take this time to maybe create a distance so that you come back with a different mood to approach the fight or the argument that you had with your roommate, you might be able to come from a fresh mood. You might be like, okay, so what happened?
In a better space to handle it.
Yeah, exactly.
But there, of course, is also a flip side to us using compartmentalization, and there are instances where it can become unhealthy really fast. So, if, of course, it's a tool, it's a coping mechanism, and if you rely on this too much, like with any coping mechanism, it can get really unhealthy. Like, for example, if you are repressing your emotions and you're not really doing the whole coming back to it, then you would not be addressing the root cause of whatever is causing you this distress. And at the same time, for example, if I did have that fight and I'm not coming back to it, then my relationship with my roommate is going to be strained, even if we're both compartmentalizing it and we put it aside. We're trying to act as everything is normal, but it's not. And it is going to cause a strain. And it can also lead to some unresolved feelings that can lead to anxiety and depression. And it can just lead to emotional detachment. Like, for example, the fight argument itself, and
Hmm.
you would be going on as things are normal, but they are not. And you would feel that emotionally. You would feel more detached to the person.
100%. So, what we learn here is that compartmentalization is meant to be temporary. When it becomes a permanent drawer that you never reopen, that's when it becomes toxic, unhealthy. It's very interesting how social media comes into picture considering this. How social media throws at us all sorts of emotionally triggering stimulus. At one second, I'm watching a cat playing with a toy, and the other second, I'm seeing somebody really struggling for life, for food, for shelter. So it's so much going on within minutes. And if here we don't compartmentalize and instead sit with each video, oh my God, what is that going to do to our nervous system? It does still affect our nervous system to a great extent, which you don't realize immediately. However, I think that's when compartmentalization plays even more important role. When we have different, all sorts of different videos, we sort of watch it in the passing, we try to compartmentalize and then move on, also get back to life. Some people are able to do it, not all of us are able to do it. Some people really struggle with it. It affects our brain, it obviously affects our mood, especially when there is, say, constant exposure to conflicting emotional stimuli. It obviously does something to our mood. But I think compartmentalization here helps. We highly rely on compartmentalization.
Yeah. It's also about how social media is kind of designed that way to trigger these emotions. Like the hooks of reels and everything are designed to kind of bring up some emotion in you, but we don't really get the space to really sit with that feeling, to actually explore that feeling. We're just hooked in. We watch the 15-second reel and then it's done, and we're moved on to a happy hook, to a sad hook, to something that's making you feel guilty hook, making you feel abandoned hook. It's just a lot going on. So while there might be things that, for example, the cat one or something about the world that you may still feel a bit more detached to because they're not immediately affecting you, even though they kind of are affecting you. Like they're affecting the world you're living in, but they're not
Yeah.
immediately affecting you right now. There would be some things that you see on social media that you really can't easily scroll past, or that do kind of immediately affect you, like your friend's Instagram story, for example. Again, bringing in the same roommate that you argued with in the morning. If, for example, you are seeing their story
Mm.
and you see something and it really pisses you off because she's using your hairbrush, it's in her story, when you just lectured her about it. That's what the argument was about. Yeah, so you would feel something about that in the moment, and it would be more difficult to compartmentalize. If, for example, you're coming across a story and you're like, okay, I will deal with this later when I get back. This is an extension of the same compartmentalization we're talking about in a healthy term. Ki, okay, I will be talking about this later. But
Right.
sometimes it also happens that we kind of unconsciously compartmentalize what we are seeing on social media. Like, for example, this is not that roommate, this is about a friend, and you are not talking to this friend anymore, and then you see a story of theirs and it brings up feelings for you. You immediately kind of tap onto the next thing to try to avoid it altogether, but then it stays with you, the feelings stay with you, maybe for the rest of the day. Suddenly your day's trajectory is a little bit off and now you don't know why, but it stayed with you. I think that can be a little tricky because in that point you don't even know that you have compartmentalized this because it has not been a conscious choice that is there.
Yeah, we do sometimes compartmentalize unconsciously. Sometimes, when our body and brain is not ready, it makes its own decision to compartmentalize, to not pay attention because that will be very overwhelming. So, even when we hear news of genocide and other brutalities around the world, if we were to pay attention to it as emotionally every time we hear news of such, that will be emotionally exhausting. In order to protect us, our mind and body gets used to it. It gets used to hearing the news, it gets used to the pain, which is
Really sad.
which is really, really sad.
Exactly. So we're kind of in a space where we also can't blame this thing for happening, but at the same time, it's a very complicated thing where it's normal for us. It's like really, honestly, abnormal for us to not care about these things. And we do
Right.
care about these things, but
Yeah.
I think it's so overwhelming to be exposed to it and not have any control over it. And I think a lot of us just kind of completely compartmentalize that. And I think so many people are kind of like, oh, yeah, wh- what do we do with this? We can't really care about this. We don't have control over this, which is really sad.
There are different reasons we compartmentalize. One of them could be when we just don't have the bandwidth to deal with it right away. Other reason could be sometimes when we unconsciously compartmentalize when our body knows maybe from previous experience that it's going to be overwhelming. And the third reason that we compartmentalize could be because there's nothing that we can immediately do about it. Maybe decided or discovered that it's not in our control, at least right now. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so these are the major reasons I can think of that we compartmentalize.
Again, bringing it back to personal experiences, like for example, if you're looking at things that you are more familiar with as opposed to things that you kind of don't have control over, I think we can still get emotionally affected by it. And what you talked about was also kind of compartmentalization happening out of this lack of control almost of what we are being exposed to, where compartmentalization seems like the only way we can kind of retain our sanity. But when we are being exposed to things that are more personal to us, it is also like it is affecting us emotionally. Those are places where I think we have more of a decision whether or not to compartmentalize and how we do that. So I think it's really important that we compartmentalize in a healthy way. So if we were to talk about how to compartmentalize in a healthy way after all of this talking about
Mhm.
bad compartmentalization also, it's important that mainly we use it as a tool instead of a shield, and the fact of it remaining temporary is really important. It needs to be temporary. We need to come back to it. We need to explore it later. So, some things we can do for your compartmentalization to be healthy is, first of all, to allot time for yourself to process the emotions that you have been avoiding. So again, I'm gonna take this argument with my hypothetical roommate. Is ki I need to set aside time, maybe right before I get back home. I need to set some time aside about ki I want to think about what happened. I want to think about how it made me feel.
Hmm.
Maybe I can talk to my friend about it. Maybe I can write about it. Anything that I need to use to introspect on it a little bit, see how I feel about it. And then I also need to prioritize, like I did, ki, okay, work is important right now, but then my relationship with my roommate is also important to me. So while work is taking precedence now, I would be focusing on work, but this is also important, so I would be getting to that. So when my roommate is gonna need my energy, I need to give it. And the main part is to circle back to it. I can't just go back home and be like, oh, this never happened. I
Hmm.
am completely fine. And she's also acting like everything is fine. We're both side-eyeing each other, giving each other passive aggressiveness. That is not going to work out and that's not healthy.
That's the whole point. You prioritizing things, whatever needs your energy right now. If you are going to continuously prioritize, let's say, work, of course, your personal life is going to struggle. And for it to not struggle, for it to come back to its pace, you have to give it the attention it needs. And so you need to come back to it. So that's what compartmentalization is. It is a tool for the here and now, but not a long term solution. I think that brings us to the end of the episode. Before we wrap up, what was your stickiest thought, Smriti?
I think that the stickiest thought for me was how much control we have over what we see is kind of really drives how much we would compartmentalize it unconsciously or consciously. And I think a lot of it is about control. Like if I have to go for work, then I can't bring things up with my roommate, and me recognizing that is going to be the good thing. But I think the stickiest thought for me is with the control, I think it really makes me think more about where is the line between us not caring at all about these things we're seeing on social media, which would be really bad and completely leave us detached from things,
Hmm.
and at the same time caring about it in a way that does not completely shatter our lives or, completely take us away from the present moment. What was the stickiest thought for you, Kajal?
I think the fact that we don't always choose what we are exposing ourselves to is sort of unsettling at times. But then there is also a privilege to not look at the news and choose to continue going on with your life. I think maybe the action comes secondary. The ability to do something about it comes secondary. But I think feeling it is something that I would like to do much more often. I think I still do whenever there's a news that is disturbing for me. If for the moment I'm compartmentalizing it, I do come back to it. I don't come back to the news, I come back to the feeling and try to sit with it, try
Hmm.
to see what it makes me feel, and maybe have a talk about it with a friend or a peer. And that's just me coming back to my feeling, giving it the space it needs, and then moving on or moving forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And now I think we would love to listen from listeners of this podcast or the viewers of the podcast to share
What
their
is
messages.
your stickiest thought from this episode?
Woohoo! Thank you. Signing
Thank
off.
you.